Good morning, everybody. So, what's got my attention today is you may or may not be aware of there is a Portugal volcanic island that's been shaken by thousands of small earthquakes that's now currently leading to evacuations and warnings of a possible earthquake and tsunami, which says destroyed thousands of properties over the last 85 days. That's to say, Portuguese volcanic extractions, volcanic island shaken by thousands of small earthquakes, could witness an eruption like that of Spain's La Palma, which destroyed thousands of properties over 85 days, experts warn. So basically, the earthquakes, there's a possibility of an earthquake. They've compared it to Spain's La Palma. The island of San George and Azores in the Mid Atlantic has been hit by more than 20,000 small earthquakes, which reached a magnitude of up to 3.3 in the past 11 days. The tremors would be preluded to a powerful earthquake or volcanic eruption, which would be the first seen since 1808, according to scientists at the region's Seamus Volcanic Centre. Now, just a couple of things about this which kind of strike me. Um, the first is the claim had since 1808. Well, no, that's not quite correct. On November the 11th, 2018, Mayat seismic event of unknown origins occurred 24 kilometres off the coast of Mayat near the Azores Island. Uh, the seismic lasted for 20 minutes. Most earthquakes have a P wave and S wave, which are later followed by long periods of surface waves. The Mayat event lacked a P wave and an S wave, but it did cause a long period of surface wave travelling at 40,000 kilometres around the globe. So actually, there was an event that took place on Armistice Day. I've actually commented on this event in the past. On March 26th, I said I have to go to swimming, but we'll go for a deeper dive on this. A few years ago, we had a phenomena here, which was in a few weeks. I'll just start that point again. So on the March the 6th of 2021, we had basically a whole bunch of whale and dolphin strandings in the North to South Island on a set longitude that then started going west to east. So basically, one set of earthquakes that basically went north to south from New Zealand all the way up to Ireland and then west to east. Uh, we noted back then that on May the 28th, the seismic event occurred as well. So that baffled scientists. It's believed to do with supervolcano waiting and coming to the surface. In relation to recent events, meaning the strandings and the activity of the ring, I can't help but wondering if we're seeing the same sort of thing. Um, so that's what I wrote on March the 6th. To recap, that is to say that we have seen this phenomena actually occur 2 years beforehand. Now, more recently, this was reported on the March of 9th, 2022, a significant earthquake and tsunami simulation will unfold tomorrow. This is called Caribbean Wave 2022, giving forecasters vicious conference situation drill to prepare them for a potential real threat future. Uh, Ongoing swarm earthquakes include impact Puerto Rico and the adjacent waters in the Caribbean. The first Caribbean Wave 2020 webinar occurred in January. So the first of these possibility of a big volcano or tsunami event taking place in the Caribbean took place in January 2022. Then we had the simulation on the March 10th exercise, and now more recently, as of March the 30th, or in fact, just like 2 weeks after this event, we start to find the beginning of earthquake events taking place around the same area. Okay, so that's kind of significant there. So an event that they said hasn't ever occurred since 1808. We know that actually there actually has been a previous event very similar to this. Then this year begins with simulation exercises, and now we find this particular event taking place, which has been compared to, I said the it's been compared to the Spain La Palma, which I know I haven't done any work on it, but I know some people have sort of found links to this which compare it to the use of artificial ionosphere stimulation, that is to say, things that are stimulating the ionosphere with man-made intentions. I note all of that because then we turn around and we've got let's go back to that pattern that we saw, which was the earthquakes travelling north to south up to the kind of Donegal Islands, Scotland area. Then they would travel from west to east, going from basically Africa across to the South American continent. So up first and then across. Now, what's interesting about that is, again, if you turn around and you look at some of the exercise pieces that I've done in the past, which include my piece on whale strandings, which was called, I think, 1,000 whale strandings is what we had in mind. Let's see if it's actually called on my website. So you're going along with me as we go. Isn't this fun? Finding this all out together. So basically, I turned around and did about 50 whales stranded. Things get shaky, and then I did 1,000 whales dead in 6 weeks' time. And again, I note in that particular event, and this is dated the November the 28th, 2020, that we have these earthquakes or events going north to east up into the Donegal area, which at that time leads to queries on the Ministry of Defence. More recently, it's been quite interesting because that same area, the UK media have actually blamed on the Russians, or the whale strandings, on the Russian submarine activities. So the mainstream media basically concur with me that the whale strandings in the Irish area are not natural, that they're being basically caused by something to do with submarines. They're putting the blame on the Russian submarines. Now, the precise area where the activity or all this interest is occurring is also where Professor David Last jumped on his airplane on November the 25th, thereabouts, in 2019. And he went to investigate this area, and his plane crashed. Now, Professor David Last is, in actual fact, he's the UK Defence's top expert on communications and GPS system. He's come out against the 5G system, much like the aviation industry and the Chinese and Russians have, saying that it will cause disruptions and cause issues in peace and war. Now, the same area, which is Ainsley, which that Professor Last was actually flying over, that area there was also an area of interest because it replicated phenomena seen in this area quite, or that is to say, there have been phenomena taking place in this area for quite some time where Professor Last was actually investigating. And that area is Ainsley in Wales. It's also where they have the BT communications tower. So we'll just see if we can find that the BT communication tower is very significant to submarine communications. That's what we're looking for. In fact, I should have got stuck with the original article, 1,000 Dead Whales. Actually, we first came up across Professor Last when looking under rocks, part 1. I'll read you out very shortly a list of articles which I think are relevant to what I'm watching. So, David Last was taking place 25th, and his background is he's the Consultant and General Lighthouse Authority of the United Kingdom and Ireland, and he is the author of The Effects of Jammers on GPS and Maritime Environments. So that's the beginning of the, say, wait a minute, 5G may not be all it's all cracked out to be. From 1990 to 1990, Ainsley was connected to the British Telecom Electronics Test Tower, designed for defence giant Serco at Cappenhurst. GSI intercepted the international communications of the Irish Republic, plus the Soviet electronic transmissions, local workers believed, crossing from Dublin to Ainsley on the newly installed optic fibre submarine cable called the UK Island. The land the Kippenhurst Electronic Test Tower power is located was purchased by the Ministry of Defence and fenced-off engagement was installed with a British Nuclear Fuel Limited boundary fence for staff at the tower. The facility is now believed to be controlled by Serco or its partner Lockheed Martin. So basically, that area that was sort of going, we see it goes, first of all, it goes south to north, then it goes west to east. We've seen this pattern repeated twice. That pattern in the area where we're basically looking at on the same date, which is the November the 25th, on the December the 7th, around about December the 8th, thereabouts, about that same time. In fact, just we'll say between November and December, we had a plane crash over here in New Zealand, which was located near Berlin Flats, which does a lot of the similar work that the BTT table does in the Northern Hemisphere. It's actually carried out use for the Physics Department, Canterbury Physics Department, and it's been previously used in ionospheric experiments involving HARP, funded by the US military and conducted by Canterbury University. Now, just prior the December the 10th, we also had the White Island volcanic eruption occurred, which, as we know, White Island is now active again as well. That White Island occurred, the events in the days beforehand, we saw a phenomenal amount of lightning. Like there was something like 850,000 strikes of lightning seen in the period, basically days before the White Island explosion. It replicates what we saw in Tonga, where Tonga again saw nearly over 900,000 lightning strikes in the period before Tonga erupted, which again is just significant because nothing like that's actually been seen beforehand. To give you a comparison, like the Westland of New Zealand, the South Island of New Zealand, Westland is called like the lightning capital of New Zealand. It normally takes about 9,000 lightning strikes a year. So when we start to see events that are actually, nearly in the millions taking place within 24 hours to 48 hours, that's a phenomenal amount of phenomena, which is quite interesting too, because more recently, we're seeing similar kind of understanding that what happened in Tonga actually had a very much an impact on the ionosphere as well. I'll try to write this all up in a kind of comprehensive report at this stage. I'm just kind of gathering my thought process at this stage. But the main thing, what's striking me here to take away from this video, is that we first of all saw this west, kind of north to south, west to east pattern taking place with simulation activity occurring in 2018. It then took place in 2021. In 2021, when we saw the strandings take place in Donegal, those were basically people began suspicion thinking there was a link to the British submarine activity. More recently, the media's kind of taken on this, but they're blaming the Russians. The area which they occurred is an area where Professor Last had his accident, and he's one of the people protesting against the 5G communication, which is one of the things that the Chinese and Russians don't like, because they don't believe these systems can be stopped. They can be jammed, and they look at them as being the basically background of very powerful second-generation weapons that are being developed. At the same time, Russia's doing a very similar thing. They've got a thing called the Poseidon there, which can be fired at the bottom of the ocean and can cause not only trigger off tsunamis, but actually radioactive-based tsunamis. So both sides are doing it, but just gives you an idea of how ferocious how arms race is actually becoming. The second thing, of course, to take out, of course, was that more recently, the Azores pattern took place, just like as I've noted previously, where there have been whale strandings in New Zealand and in sites that are located to where we know the HARP signals are tested. And again, I said to you, Professor Last had a crash. We witnessed a similar crash taking place in New Zealand. We then saw basically the launch taking place at the same date from Rocket Lab. It was part of what they call the CUSPS initiative. See if we can find something on that at the stage. Go Control F. Actually, in fact, it's called Chi. I got that completely wrong. And that took place on the there's so much of the stuff I'm looking at my own posts and going how much it connects, and it's quite strange. So here's the 50 whales strand things to get shaky in the Pacific Ring 2020,003, which I did on my website. December 2020, 3 stranded, Perianga Harbour, December 14th, Indonesia. So again, south to north. And December 4th, there's so that similar event that I told you about happened in Wales, that was 2019, 200 dead starlings found in the same area that Professor Last basically went to explore. And November the 22nd, dozens of people reported a serious explosion akin to a sonic boom coinciding 9 Aberdeen Birdling Flat. So that was actually the Birdling Flats plane crash. The Chi experiment, I'll come back to that in a second, but the plane crash was the 25th, so the same date as the Chi experiments were launched from Rocket Lab. The same date that the Chi experiments occurred in Norway, which was on the 25th of November. The plane crash took place in the Birdling Flats area, where they were again, November 25th was the original date for the Rocket Lab to be launching its part of what was running out of fingers, which included the part of this Norwegian experiment, which was actually launched on this December the 6th, 4 days before the White Island. Now, the mission is supported by a grant from the National Science Foundations. It aims to investigate regions of natural ionospheric turbulence. According to Reese, these patches of disturbing ions, the electrons can corrupt radio transmissions and wreak havoc on essential Earth and space-based communications and navigation channels. The Antarctic end of the Chi mission was monitored at King George Island, Antarctica, where Chilean Air Force also lost an aircraft. The crew listing included a major general and a remote sensor who went missing on December the 9th, 2019. So effectively, the day before White Island, this plane went down as well. So there was 3 plane crashes in total. One that took place with Professor Last on the November the 25th. Then there was another plane crash on the same day in New Zealand. And then there was a 3rd plane crash on the December the 9th. And then I said to you, this is the same time that the multiple lightning strikes are actually hitting the Coromandel Hawke's Bay area from where Rocket Lab actually launched. Now, the Chilean plane, it's just auto put that in context because the Radio New Zealand also put, it was either end of December 2018 or early January, that Chile was sending people to investigate UFOs that were actually, and I'm, literally don't believe me, looking up, but I believe that was a bit of a smoke screen that these guys are actually, because they were interested in the UFOs, Pacific activity over certain areas, which happen to be the same areas. So I think they're in reality not really interested in UFOs at all, but they're interested in this electromagnetic anomaly, which is said as and this is taking place at the same time that China and Russia band together on controversial heating experiments to modify the atmosphere, which is reported on the Herald and on the 17th of December 2018. And then on November the 30th, 2019, Zhongyun Chinese state-owned agency announced China's first seismic electromagnetic experiment, Zhang 1, had obtained fruitful electromagnetic data according to the Chinese Science and Technology Corporation. It obtained information about global ground artificial sources, magnetic storms, and signals earthquakes above 7 magnitude. It also helps understand the coupling mechanisms of the lithosphere and the ionosphere. Xing Hu, the chief scientist of satellites, said China is expected to have 3 electromagnetic in orbit by 2020, offering support for earthquakes forecasts as well as other space weather monitoring and warning. Again, the last point to make out is that the experiments that took place in Norway took place at locations that were formerly or are under control of Lockheed Martin. The area which Professor Lars took, his plane went down, that area is also controlled by Lockheed Martin. And of course, Lockheed Lab itself's chief investor is Lockheed Martin. And this was all taking place at the time that Russia and China complaining about the 5G network, because they believe it actually is the backbone of second generation, more powerful weapons. Just also worth noting that on 2011, Professor Kusuku Haki of the Hokkaido University made headlines when he stated GPS played a role in detecting electromagnetic disturbances such as those detected over several major events, including the 2004 Indonesian tsunami, the March 2011 tsunami in Japan, and the 2010 earthquake in Chile. And this is when the state of Chile started to believe that some of these events were not actually naturally occurring. Just to put that actually out there in context as well. Not saying any of these events are man-made. I don't have that knowledge base. I'm simply reporting the fact that we've seen a repetition of, now this will be the third time now that I've seen that, going north to south, east to west pattern. The areas that when we look at, when we actually pick them up under closer examination, we find that there are either major electromagnetic based offensive oriented military based hardware, HARP, etc. Or we find this is the area where there are whale strandings which are being blamed by mainstream sources on submarine activity. So that's just my little report today, and I'll let you make of it what you will.